Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SaaS Showdown. I'm Rose Layton, and this is my partner in crime,
Colin McCarthy. Welcome to 2023. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought, Colin? Today, we are just going to recap everything that happened in the last 2 months while Colin and I were on our Christmas vacations.
Yep, hopefully everybody else was too, enjoying their seasonal vacations, whichever one they want to pick.
And not getting stuck in the airport.
No, I didn't travel. I know you have traveled a little bit. I believe it has been...
I did not technically travel at all for the holidays, to be fair. But I did drive 2,100 miles
That is
Chicago.
quite a journey. But yeah, a lot of people spend a lot of time looking at Aunt Annie's, whatever those pretzel stands are, probably thinking, how many of these should we be buying during the day as we wait for hours and hours for our flights?
How many of these can I shove in my mouth?
Yeah, is it Auntie Annie's pretzels, the cinnamon pretzels?
That's right.
Or all of
I don't know. I've actually never bought one.
Hudson News, going to Hudson News and buying a $6 water. Okay. So yeah, airports, collapses, travel woes. Where did it go wrong, and where was the main problem, and why is this important to SaaS Showdown?
Well, I think the big news, Colin, right? There are always a lot of travel snafus every year during the holidays, but the reason that this is important this time is because of what happened at Southwest.
Meanwhile, Southwest Airlines has already cancelled more than 2,300 flights just today.
And maybe didn't even make enough cancellations.
Luggage continues to pile up as a nationwide meltdown continues. Over 64% of Southwest Airlines flights today have been canceled.
There were a lot of things that happened at Southwest, to be fair, but we're going to focus on, I think, the business side of it and the technology side of it. But ultimately... let me check my dates.
Yeah. And while you do that, just to say for our international viewers, obviously you might have heard of Southwest. It's a very US-based regional carrier, was one of the first budget airlines, now sort of a mid-tier airline within the US, flies everywhere. But
absolutely. Notable factoids about Southwest is that you can bring 2 bags and you choose your own seat while you board the plane.
Yes, that was their inspirational difference in the 1990s. You didn't have an assigned seat. It was like getting on a bus. Whoever turned up first got the best seat. And apparently it's supposed to be quicker boarding.
So shortly before Christmas, there was a sort of massive polar vortex. And it shut down or flights sort of across the United States from all airlines. Southwest had to cancel more than 15,000 of their flights due to a cascading technological failure that they were just like unable to recover from. So I think like even a week after Christmas, they were still running at like less than 50% capacity, which is insane.
Because when things, the term cascade, things just get worse and worse and worse. And
and so like the more flights that got canceled, the worse the whole situation got. And it turns out, like I was reading about, the effect on the employees and, like sort of mistreatment. And I think all of that is pretty standard in the industry. I'm not going to lie to you. But the part that I thought was most interesting was this sort of idea that the technology behind Southwest was not able to keep up with flight cancellations.
Right.
I was like, oh, you're just clearing your docket. Like how bad could it be? And then I read sort of a beautiful piece on LinkedIn, I'm sure it was, that described how the systems that they have in place were basically unable to keep track of where planes were, where pilots were, where flight crews were.
Bags.
Because they weren't where they were supposed to be from the flights that had been canceled. And so this sort of cascading problem and not really knowing where everybody was, being able to unable to schedule new flights
Right.
to sort of take the place of these old flights.
Yes.
Was
Because if those
just a massive
yeah,
problem.
because if those crew and the flight crew are on standby waiting for a flight, obviously the clock is ticking, and then when they run out of flight hours, or they have to stand down and get another crew, and obviously, so that's where the cascading probably happens, that you can't update, replicate quick enough for what's available, who's supposed to be doing what, when, where, with what resources, and then communicating and updating the passengers. They would have been better just having a bullhorn saying, we've got a plane on platform 1 or airport, terminal 1, gate 1,
and we're gonna
it's gonna fly to San Francisco. Anybody that wants to go to San Francisco, go on that plane. I've been at a train station in New York, Hoboken, leaving. And the system was failing. It was during, I think, a power cut or a storm, and they were like, "We have one train. It's going to go in this direction. It will stop at every stop. If you want to leave the city, get on this train, and we will. This is the last train." And they did it manually with a tannoy. That would have been
well, and you can do that with trains. Planes, I think they're a little more limited capacity. I'm not really sure on the exact numbers.
Yeah, there's more flight paths and authorization that's probably needed than a static
and it's not
train.
it's not like you can take a plane and just be like, and we're gonna make every stop.
Yes, so
because that's not how that works at all.
No. So obviously SaaS. They should have done? What should other companies that thinking, oh, I don't have to worry about X, Y, and Z because I'm not a Southwest. My on-premise, SQL server is fine. My, Postgres database, in Citrix is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the moral of the story here is something that every business can learn from, because ultimately what happened, and what I've read from the analysis, is that Southwest had outgrown their optimization software, which is the software that is doing all of this sort of booking and like tracking and things like that. They had long outgrown it, and they had been using it for a couple of decades. So,
right.
First off, Colin and I both know if you're using something that you were using a couple of decades ago, it's probably not good anymore. Technology has changed a lot in a couple of decades. So if you're using those words to describe your stuff, take a good, long, hard look at yourself in the mirror and ask what you're doing, because chances are there is a better way to do it. Even better than chances are, there's almost certainly a better way to do it now than there was a couple of decades ago.
Yes.
And so I think the other piece of this is that they had outgrown it, right? The capacity and the volume that they were doing was significantly higher than it used to be. And the system was kind of running on like the maximum all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And I think when you let your systems do that, there's a reason why, like IT people, we tend to keep a few extra licenses around, right? We try to forecast better. We try to do all of those things because we know of the failures that happen when you hit max.
Yes. Yeah. It's like a SAN, like when we used to have SANs, they would, the Dell ones, the Ecologics would, send you warnings if you were running over 70%, capacity, because you had to have that.
If your
buffer.
hard disk capacity is reaching the top, like we know that causes problems. Yes. And that's a very just small, innocuous, like everyday example of how we understand this phenomenon. Right. But like the idea that like you could let not only a couple of decades old system go, but also a system that was being used for far more than it used to be, is just, I mean, it was just waiting to happen. So I think, unfortunately, the execs at Southwest probably deserve every bit of pain that they experienced.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure it was not a great Christmas.
For not listening, because I'm sure somebody pointed that out at some point.
Airlines pilots and flight attendants unions say the meltdown was avoidable and that they've been warning the airline for years to upgrade its outdated systems.
You know, your employees tend to know exactly where your points of failure are going to be. And so I wouldn't be surprised to find out that like they had proposed it and either it was deprioritized or
they'll say, we'll get to it
you.
in 2025. We've got a new system coming on board, or XYZ.
Yeah. And when the real truth is like there's no time to wait.
No.
And
so the takeaway teachable case study moment for 2023, when you're looking at your network and looking at what you should be doing, there should be no I'll put that off until tomorrow, because when tomorrow comes, it will be an absolute nightmare. And regardless of whether you're a giant airline or a small,
and for you, it could
firm,
be a PR nightmare. It could be a revenue nightmare.
Manufacturing.
It could be a national emergency.
Yes, yeah. And the thing that you might want to replace or upgrade could be on back order, could take a while, will take, time to deploy.
So let me tell you, I would be surprised if Southwest was not replacing that system this year.
Yeah. Let's hope there's
after that. Like that was a massive
and
issue.
Let's hope there's a software as a service replacement for them. Running in GCP with a whole load of, or AWS, Azure, even. Maybe not Rackspace. We'll get to that. That has the capacity to expand. So and burst and.
Or even, just a system that, work with the SAPs of the world, the Oracles of the world. Like Southwest is a big enough company, like to self-design something. But, it better be hosted and secured by someone else and like, so that you don't have to worry about it. And like, you need to be checking your volume all the time. All the time. Okay. So now that we've talked about Southwest, because I just thought airlines are near and dear, I think, to many people, especially in business and especially in the remote world, because we have to travel.
Well, I have heard that there might be some travel happening in 2023. A lot of companies are traveling again. And the other day,
Colin, I'm traveling next week.
You're traveling next week? Oh, yeah, look at that. Look at you.
I'm going to San Francisco next week for an on-site.
Excellent. I'm excited. But I also heard that Google Next is going to be in person in San Francisco.
Google Next has just been announced for August 29th through the 31st. And I'm overjoyed to report it will be in person. I repeat, they're going to host 15,000 people in San Francisco. Steve, fire up the jet. We're going to San Francisco.
Google Next is also in person this year. Yes, I did hear about
September,
that. That's very exciting.
People will be flying.
And that's a big nod. Well, I mean, we can talk about this when conference season comes up, but that's a big nod to other conferences too, to be like, hey, let's go in person again.
Yeah, and all the hotels are like, yes, we can quadruple our prices.
Yeah, all the hotels and all the airlines are like, yes, thank God. But also, I think a lot of us, you went to Google Next last year.
No, only virtually. 2019.
Well, yes. No. That's what I mean. You went to Google Next online.
The last
3 years.
The last real year. 2019, I went in person. Yes,
I've never been. I was supposed to go in 2020.
Oh, it's a good event. But anyway, as you say, we'll get to that. So
yes, we will.
So
the other big thing that has been going on for the last 2 months is breaches.
Did you say breeches? Like trousers?
Breaches, Colin. Breaches. Data breaches.
Everybody's being hacked.
Everybody is being hacked. Which reminds me, if I have not yet said my security philosophy on the show, my security philosophy is that you will be hacked. And then all you can do is prepare for that eventuality and limit the carnage. That is it.
Yes.
That's my security philosophy. Colin, how do you feel about that?
Very, very wise words. And it should be everybody's. It probably is a lot of other people's.
Well, actually, I don't think so.
Well, what is terrifying with, some of these companies that have been compromised is the compromises were not somebody dropping a USB stick in the car park and an employee picking it up and plugging it in the computer to see what was on it,
Exactly.
like Mr. Robot. Or it wasn't.
They were.
It wasn't.
LastPass getting hacked.
It wasn't.
Did I let the cat out of the bag?
Yes, it wasn't.
I let the cat out of the bag.
It wasn't breaking through the firewall with a load of fake IP addresses.
Yeah, it wasn't the kind of social engineering you expected from your employees. It was your password manager got hacked.
But your password manager got hacked because of a phishing attack with other compromised credentials.
Yes, so somebody else's employees.
Yes.
Social engineering on someone else's employees, which is a real thing that we have to worry about in SaaS. If you're a SaaS administrator, this is a thing that we have to worry about. It's part of the whole idea of outsourcing software hosting.
Yep.
Right? If we're hosting our own software, we have to deal with the security, and there's a ton of things that go along with that. If we're not hosting our own software and we're using SaaS, somebody else is hosting that, and we are using economies of scale to try and keep ourselves more secure. However, if the last 2 months have shown nothing else, it has shown that those economies of scale are not always what they're cracked up to be. So, Colin, how bad was the LastPass breach?
LastPass has suffered a major security breach.
LastPass reported a security incident.
LastPass suffered a massive security breach.
Catastrophic, potentially, I think.
In what way?
Because it has really thrown a cat amongst the pigeons to the whole idea of putting all of your passwords in a single password manager, which is, a single point of failure. At the moment,
That's true.
Having passwords on Post-it notes on my monitor at home is potentially more secure.
Hold on just a second, Colin. Talk.
Testing.
Okay. I was getting some clicking while you were talking.
Oh, right.
It's gone now.
I thought we were having a moment's silence for LastPass.
Yeah, that's true. They're dead. They're dead. Although, honestly, you could also play the game that like LastPass is okay because surely they will come back stronger from this.
Yes. And
I don't know how I feel about that. We'll leave that up to the viewers.
And it will be very difficult for large corporations to move off of it because it has been used for a long time in corporations as their shared password manager. It had a terrible UI, had a terrible administrative panel.
Yeah, we're not. I don't think we're fans of LastPass here. However, there are companies that use it. I've been at a company that moved off of it.
Yep.
I think it has a lot of solid usability features. Like it's definitely on par feature wise with like 1Password.
Yeah.
I think the UI though does leave a little bit to be desired.
Yeah. Certainly if you're trying to be an administrator and share it with secrets
and if you're
with
a
others.
company on LastPass, you suddenly have a whole bunch of work on your lap.
Yes.
Because all of your passwords have been compromised. And
potentially
that's a problem. That means potentially compromised, but you can't mess around with potentially.
Yes.
You have to pretend that they're all compromised now. And so you basically need to have every single person who's using LastPass at your company go in and change the passwords for every single one of the accounts that they have in LastPass, which is a monumental undertaking, and I don't envy them.
Nope.
But it has to happen.
Even on a personal level, if you're just using LastPass for your own personal usage, for your Zappos, for your Amazon, for your HelloFresh.
Well, and a lot of people at work will use their work emails for all kinds of things. You have to change all of those passwords now too. Yep. I'm sorry, you do. And if you were using the password manager correctly, in the sense that like you're letting it generate the passwords for you, then it's not that big of a deal to like only change the passwords that are in LastPass. If you had entered any passwords, like a personal password or something, and let LastPass remember it, guess what? Now you have your whole personal life too.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you're reusing passwords at all. So, I mean, I think it just underscores like the password hygiene thing. And it also, I mean, it does call into question, like, should we be using password managers? I think, remember last season when we were talking with Bert?
Yeah.
And we talked about passwordless?
Yep.
I feel like that's going to become the way of the future. And I'm not sure what our password manager friend companies are going to be doing about that.
Yeah.
But like multiple forms of authentication besides passwords.
Yeah.
Right? Like a security key and biometrics instead of passwords at all.
Yeah.
Is the way that I would go about it. But like
single sign-on obviously is very important for businesses, so people only have one login for something rather than multiple logins for different things.
Single sign-on becomes slightly less important if you only have if you're not doing passwords though.
Right. Yeah. You got to probably have one to start with, unless it is.
Speaking of single sign-on.
Oh, yes.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Something happened to Okta.
Okta has been hacked. They are one of the biggest companies that offer SSO and multi-factor authentication, so pretty much all the important stuff that we never want to get hacked. They service over 15,000 businesses, Fortune 500 companies, so it's kind of a big deal.
More trust is potentially eroded and gives more people worries about, certainly with this one, because the source code was taken as well from compromised credentials accessing GitHub, I believe. It's very worrying because you could have incredibly sophisticated and genuine looking phishing attacks if the whole, or maybe even if somebody has the source code and they can, look at it and examine it, might find vulnerabilities within the Okta system that haven't been detected.
Absolutely.
That's the big worry. And also that has been the application that a lot of companies have trusted for MFA, MDM,
SSO, automation in some cases.
Yeah, with the Okta workflows.
Definitely some, provisioning and whatnot. Well, and I mean, like, they seem to have recovered well. Like, nobody's really talking about this, I think, now. When it first happened, though, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, my security channel in the Slack that we're on was very, very busy in December and November. And even I think LastPass had two incidents, one in August and then one in November. And it's like, when it got posted in November, it's like, oh, that's old news. It's like, oh no, this is a resurgence of something that happened before. I think it was people had accessed it through an API key or a token that hadn't been refreshed due to the August vulnerability. But yeah, there's been, even the FBI, their cybersecurity program had been hacked through social engineering, I believe. There's just too many.
And and one note about the Okta like source code one is that they sent an email to all of their security contacts, which it was sort of a ill-defined group. And I recall like one of our colleagues who works at a reseller said that he received the email notifying them of the breach, even though he doesn't administer an Okta environment. So it was rather interesting. And we're going to talk about this later on in the season about like how companies respond to these kinds of incidents, because there's a lot to be desired there. But I thought that was interesting, is that they notified the way in which they notified everyone. Was not quite right. A lot of people just read about it in the news.
I did. I think it was either through Twitter or LinkedIn that I saw about it. But
yeah, and I saw it on Slack.
So the hackers are still going after these really, really big targets through relatively simple means, just by compromising an end user account. But also in earlier this year, there was news that other businesses near and dear to our hearts were also compromised. Five Guys, a very famous burger place, their HR department was
yeah,
compromised.
the Five Guys breach was very, very the breach notice that we posted about was so chock full of hamburger jokes that it was amazing. First of all,
and then.
But I mean, the breach turned out to be it's pretty standard. Pretty standard altogether.
And then ransomware attack in the UK hit KFC and Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell. The Royal Mail.
If you haven't heard of any of these, we will link all of them.
In the show notes, the Royal Mail in the UK, the postal service, they couldn't send any packages or postage internationally due to a cyber incident. PayPal had accounts breached due to credential stuffing, and then with all of these compromises and data being leaked, you think, I'm going to invest in one of those security companies like Norton LifeLock to protect my identity.
This is Colin's favorite thing. He's just like, I'm just going to name drop and name drop and name drop and then lead you right into.
I'm doing the layup and I'm doing the assist for you to do the slam dunk. Yes, Norton LifeLock. A lot of people pay the subscription fee for Norton LifeLock to protect their identity, and I
don't trust Norton.
They had credential stuffing attack again.
You did.
So allowing intruders to access customer saved passwords. So what?
Yeah.
So 2023 is
off to a really big bang in terms of hacking.
Yes. For those
and like credentials being stolen and source code being stolen, and I mean we're really off to a good start for 2023.
Yeah. So my recommendation to fellow colleagues, IT admins, SaaS admins, SaaS op admins, audit all of your user accounts. Make sure you have a strong JML process. Make sure everybody knows about phishing attacks. Make sure MFA is enabled. Make your IT department approachable so users will ask questions rather than click on something.
And make your engineers cycle their tokens.
Yes. Yeah. And in the words of Mulder, trust no one from the X-Files. It is,
trust absolutely no one.
Yep.
That's for sure. I think that's a good place to leave it today, Colin.
I think that's enough. We've given enough bad news and added a list of all of the problems that have plagued companies at the end of 2022 as we go into a fresh new year with nothing else to worry about.
But listen, everything is bleak, but we're still having a good time.
Yes. Yeah.
So we've got some episodes planned for this season. We're going to be talking about some heavy stuff. We're going to be talking about how to deal with heavy stuff because heavy stuff is not going to stop coming.
No.
And I think that's the best we can do is just get you to think about it a little bit more, try to prepare you for some of these eventualities. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Yeah.
But we're going to do the best we can.
Yep. Try and keep everybody safe and secure and get them thinking. That's the main thing. Questioning and thinking. Thank you, Rose. Again, It's been great to chat. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
See you next time.
Produced by the tabGeeks Network. Enjoy all of our shows on YouTube at youtube.com/tabgeeks.